This is the story about how the Truck 12 came to our farm. I come from a family of truck drivers. My grandfather was the first. He was born and raised on a farm south of here, and in the 1920s the Standard Oil delivery driver let him drive the truck down the driveway as a little boy, and that was what got him hooked. He decided then and there that he wanted to be a truck driver. So eventually him and his brother started hauling stuff. They hauled fish, a lot of fish from Seattle over to Montana. And then in 1946, they acquired a milk route and started hauling milk for the Carnation Company. My grandfather did that for many years. Back then, all the milk was handled in 10-gallon cans, so he was a pretty strong guy. He could lift those into the back of a truck no problem, about 100 pounds each. You could take one in each arm. In the 50s, they switched to bulk milk transport, so everything was in tanks and you transferred it with pumps and hoses. And then in 1973, my father joined the company and started hauling milk, and my uncle hauled milk as well. And I grew up riding the milk trucks. In fact, according to my mom, I've been trucking since I was 2 months old. But anyway, after high school, I joined the Coast Guard, and that was going to be a short-term thing, and that was almost 18 years ago. I'm still doing it. Evidently, I liked it. But my family kept trucking until 2008. My dad and uncle retired. In November of 2015, my wife Virginia and I, we were sitting on the couch in Ketchikan, Alaska. That's where I was stationed at the time. And we were watching a documentary on Mount St. Helens. Anyway, they were showing some still shots, black and white still shots of the time from the 1980 eruption. And there was this picture of this car in the ditch covered in ash, had a canoe on top. And in the background on the highway, there was this milk truck going by. And I looked at Virginia, I'm like, I think that's 12. Of course, she had no idea what I was talking about, so I had to explain to her that 12 was a little 2-axle Kenworth tractor that my family had. They acquired it in 1979. The truck's actually in 1971. It was built for Bruce Motor Freight out of Iowa. And sometime a few years after that, a milk hauler out of Sunnyside, Washington acquired it. And then my family bought them out in 1979, and that's when they got the truck. And it was number 12, that's why it's called 12. But that was from a previous owner. We didn't number it 12. But anyway, I explained to her, this truck, and I have vague memories of it as a child. And I called my dad and uncle, and they were both really excited to hear about this. And my uncle, he was like, I know the guy who has it. And so he was able to get me in contact with it. And we'd been looking for another farm truck bigger than what we have. We have an F-150, but eventually we want to pull a gooseneck stock trailer, and we were looking for something probably in like the F-350 range. Definitely nothing as big as a Kenworth. But as it happened to be, he made me an offer I couldn't resist, so I bought the truck, and it's a lot of work. It was one of those things where it hadn't been running a while, but it ran when parked. We didn't know exactly how long that was, but that was in November 2015. And then the following spring, it just sat there all winter. The following spring, my uncle, who was the company's mechanic, and I mean he knows the quirks of this truck. He was able to get us started. We had to put new batteries in it because the batteries were dead, and a new ignition switch because the keys were lost. And with just those two things, I was still in Alaska at the time, but he said it rolled over about 3 times and it started right up. So once we knew it ran, that was a huge thing. I took some leave from the Coast Guard and I came down to Spokane, and my uncle and he helped me change the oil and the filters, and we replaced the coolant and water filter and the radiator hoses, and kind of just you know, cleaned up the engine a little bit and worked on a few other minor things, replaced some fuel tank vents and fuel caps, and got a few other parts. So my truck is a 1971 Kenworth K100 cab over. It's actually a K121, so it's a 2-axle tractor. It's a day cab, and it's got a Cummins V903 diesel in it. It's a V8 diesel, and it's interesting because I actually have experience with the V903s. The Coast Guard actually used them in their utility boats. The 41-foot utility boats had twin VT 903Ms. The M is for Marine, and so I ran those on the Great Lakes. And the military in general has used the V903s. The Bradley Fighting Vehicle uses the 903 as well. So the truck was originally bought new from Kenworth in 1971 by Bruce Motor Freight out of Iowa. And then sometime in the 70s, it was bought by a milk hauler called Cliff Vining out of Sunnyside, Washington. And he had the truck and he used it to haul milk down there in the Yakima Valley. And my family's company bought him out in 1979, so that's when my family acquired the truck. My family ran it as a milk truck for quite a few years, and then in 1986 my dad bought it from the company, so it became his personal truck, and he ran it for a few years, and then he eventually sold it. But I think that's one of the reasons it has such sentimental value. My dad was alive when I bought it in November 2015, but just this past January he passed away, and that's been very hard, but it's definitely given this truck and this project a new meaning and a new significance for me. So I'm very proud to own this truck, even though it's probably a money pit and it's a lot of work. But when I do get it fixed up, I think it's going to be very useful on the farm here. We plan to use it to pull a gooseneck stock trailer. So being a little 2-axle day cab, I think it's perfectly sized for that. It'll definitely have enough power. I won't have any problem pulling anything, but I think it'll pair nicely with a nice gooseneck stock trailer. So while my uncle and I worked on the truck, the previous owner was gracious enough to let us leave it on his property as we worked on it. By the fall of 2016, so about a year, almost a year after I bought it, I decided I wanted to go ahead and get it moved up to the farm. And the guy I bought it from does that kind of work, so I was able to pay him to move it up. We thought about driving it up, but it wasn't worth it to get the things fixed that we needed at that point, plus having to get temporary registration and insure it. So for us, it was just cheaper to get them to haul it up. So we did do that, but because of our driveway, we couldn't get his truck in here, so we actually unloaded it in the street, and we actually drove the truck onto our farm, which was a great time. I got to drive it for the first time and park it where it's parked, and Virginia got a ride in it. I wanted to take a second just to talk real quick about some of the references that I use when working on 12. The first one is the Kenworth Maintenance Manual, and this was given to me by my uncle. This is not for 12 originally, but was for another cab over. My family bought a 1974 K100 that they used as a milk truck. So this has come in handy. It covers a lot of information. Next is the Cummins V903 shop manual, and my uncle also gave this to me, and this is for 12 originally. He bought this when the company acquired 12 in 1979, and even after the company sold it, he hung on to this, and that was very beneficial for me because now I have it. I also have the V903 maintenance manual. So the last one was a shop manual. This is a maintenance manual, so this is more my speed. I got this off eBay, and it has come in handy. Next is the Fuller heavy-duty transmission tech manual for my RT910 transmission. I downloaded this straight off the Fuller website. Next is the Kenworth Driver's Handbook. I found this in my dad's house, and it's dated 1973, but it's just more the basics, owner's manual type stuff. And then one of the most useful things thus far that I've gotten, and I got this from PACCAR, is actually the final chassis bill of material 412. So this is basically the original spec from when the truck was built, and it gives the history of the truck. So it's dated August 9th, 1971. It was originally bought by Bruce Motor Freight and distributed out of Kenworth, Mid-Iowa. Gives all the serial numbers for everything. This is how the frame was set up, and it covers every part on this truck. It's a line-by-line item of every nut, bolt, hose, every valve, every piece of the truck is listed in here. And this is coming very in handy, especially when going to talk to a Kenworth dealer to try and find parts. So that's the final chassis bill of material, and is probably the most useful thing that I've had thus far. I'm also very grateful for the online community. I've met some amazing people online who are enthusiasts for the Kenworth cabovers, and they've been very helpful in knowledge and acquiring parts and just general encouragement. Surprisingly, quite a few parts are still available. I've managed to find a bunch through Kenworth themselves. Otherwise, a lot of the other parts are generic. You can still get them from the original manufacturers. Although there are some things that I have had to do a little more research on, as far as going to salvage yards and such. We've been doing more work on it, and that will be another update video.